Good morning to all webinar attendees. We have about 200 people from different enterprises, institutes of higher education, and fellow colleagues from SSG here with us today. A very warm welcome to the 21st Jobs and Skills Insight webinar on the future of work post-COVID-19. I am Lois, your moderator for today, and together with me are Alex and Pei, and we are from the Skills Development Division at Skills Future Singapore. SSG provides all Singaporeans with the opportunities to develop their potential throughout their lives. We believe that skills, passion, and the contribution from each and every one of us will drive Singapore's next phase of development towards an advanced economy and a more inclusive society. Regardless of which point you are at in your life, you can be sure to find a variety of resources to help you attain skills mastery and make informed decisions to expand your skill sets for professional and career development. Now, before we start the webinar proper, please allow me to go through some administrative details. This entire webinar will take about 15 minutes. During the webinar, attendees are muted by default to avoid electronic feedback and interference. However, you can post your questions anytime by using a Q&A option on your screen. If you see any question by other attendees that you also like answered, you can upvote those questions and we will do our best to address them. If we are unable to address to all questions during the session, please be assured that we will address them after the webinar. The speaker will be speaking for about 40 minutes, followed by another 10 minutes of Q&A. The webinar session will be recorded and published on my Skills Future portal, SSG's LinkedIn page, and YouTube channel. The slides will also be shared with all of you via email afterwards. Now, without further ado, please let me introduce our speaker for today. Wee-Tiong is the founder and CEO of a leading local technology startup, JobTech. During his 10-year stint as a researcher in a Singapore public-funded research institute, Wee-Tiong was one of the masterminds behind the development of advanced deep learning models that allow computers to understand human content, behaviors, and automate mundane tasks. Today, he uses his invention to understand the labor market inefficiencies and help people learn and future-proof themselves with the help of labor market and education data. As we will all agree that 2020 has been a year of many new challenges, as many of us found ourselves entering uncharted grounds without much preparation. We see that new HR trends have emerged as the lasting effect of workplace and workforce changes as a result of the disruptions due to pandemic. It is therefore critical for business leaders to understand that large-scale shifts are changing how people work and how business gets done. By responding effectively to these HR trends, will then help their organizations stand out from competitors. In this session, Wee-Tiong will discuss how to navigate this new normal, new challenges facing HR leaders using labor market data and insights, and how to present them to internal stakeholders in a sound, auditable, and explainable manner. Now I will pass the time to our speaker today. Wee-Tiong, please.
Thank you. Let me share my screen, some slides to share. I'll be giving a brief introduction of what JobTech does on a day-to-day basis, what kind of information, what kind of data that we have, and what kind of models we have built, and to help not just organizations but individuals transform themselves. Not just due to the current COVID-19 pandemic, but even before the COVID-19 pandemic, we have been talking about rapid technological advancements that has the potential to disrupt the jobs that we know. And I guess the general statement that I'm trying to make here is, is essentially there's data out there, and there are also very sophisticated tools out there to help individuals or to help organizations navigate this new normal. I'm going to show you some in general, some of these technologies and information that's available that you can use to transform either your employees or yourself. So JobTech is a 4-year-old company, spin-off from A-Star, where we took our invention and commercialized our invention. And since we have incepted 4 years ago, we have been analyzing labor market data, and we using the labor market data, we have also created a product called Talented, where we service 3 market segments. The first market segment is enterprises. So we are helping organizations, companies with their talent acquisition, learning and development needs, employee engagement, as well as skills inventory for the organizations to align to business needs. If you read on the news recently, the second customer segment that we focus very much on is on tertiary institutions, where we help students with market-driven learning. And what it means is essentially showing the students, pre-employment students, right, market reality of Singapore or around the region, on the skills requirements and what they're studying today, whether they can help, help themselves by taking certain modules to close certain skills gaps that is actually data-driven and not based on a gut feel. The third market segment that we focus very much on is because we have all these information, data, and insights. We also provide global consultancy firms, governments, these information for labor economics modeling, labor and education for policy formulations, and most recently helping out on unemployment management. And our work with SSG was a very interesting one, because that's the mid and longer term future where we work very closely with SSG on building workforce resilience and transformation. And I'm very grateful. I'm very grateful for the chance to actually to be presenting in this SSG webinar. So before I go into the technologies that's available out there, I just want to give you a feel of the scale of data that we have that we use to solve labor market business problems. We always tell people that data is important, and we have access to 3 sets of data: demand, supply, and education. And why are these 3 sets of data important? The first set of data that we always talk about is demand. Demand is what the market needs, what employers are looking out for, what kind of skill sets are they looking out for, what kind of qualification, even though we want to move away from qualification into a skills-based economy, but what kind of qualifications, what kind of years of experience, so on and so forth. And in terms of demand data, today we have processed more than 1 billion global jobs, 5 million in Singapore, across 144 countries. And what do we mean by process? Is essentially the machine understands the requirements of the employers. And what you see in the background of these slides is a bunch of green blobs and gray lines connecting these green blobs. If you zoom in on a little panel here, what you see here is each and every of these green blobs are actually the skills that are that we have in our machine, where it understands the relationships between each and every of the skills and what kind of skills are required in a certain occupation, and how do we then do digital transformation of this occupation. And essentially what you see here is a green skill with a yellow outline, and that's the digital transformation part in this traditional occupation. And in terms of supply data, we're not a B2C company, and even though we do have a B2C front where people upload their CV onto our platform, and in return, right, for free, we provide them with very personalized learning and development roadmap, as well as job recommendations. And across Asia Pacific, we have more than 800,000 CV profiles in our system. And because we know demand and supply, we are able to then say we reduce labor market inefficiencies by understanding the skills requirements and what the supply doesn't have. And that's where our third set of data comes into play, which is we have courses, education data. We know what they teach and how they can help potentially close the skills gaps of the of an individual or even abstracted to a company level. What kind of whether, for example, your department lacks certain skills to move forward in your next business goals. And using the data, we also provide kind of national level kind of analysis of our talent demand and supply, which we call our talent quadrant. What you see here is a snapshot of the entire Singapore labor economics model. This is done using the banking and financial sector information. And essentially what you're seeing here is, we are able to map out, demand and supply and the skillfulness of the supply on the y-axis. The x-axis is actually the number of banking and finance jobs per period time. And why do I mention per period time? If you notice the little bar below 2019 to 2020, we are able to then see whether certain roles are growing or declining over time. And then we are able to make very specific analysis and recommendations based on that. For example, if you look at this big pink bubble in the talent quadrant, what you see here, this is a finance executive role. In terms of the size of the bubble, this is actually, there are a lot of people in this space, in this occupation. But if you look at the x-axis, this is a screenshot, so it's 2D, but essentially between 2019 and 2020, there's a stark decrease in the number of jobs in finance executive role. So this is a declining demand. But if you look at the y-axis, the people in this role are relatively skilled in this role. And that's where, in terms of recommendations on a policy point of view, is then would the government be able to create more jobs in this sector and in this occupation? Or if more jobs are not possible, then we should focus on people that are currently in this role for career redeployment and reskilling. So this is a very specific way of looking at transformation of the workforce moving forward. If you look here on the data analyst role, is relatively small, the circle. What it means is in the market, there's a low supply of them. And in the x-axis is actually growing from 2019 to 2020. The supply is actually skilled. And I think this will probably be attributed to the good work the government has done in terms of, or SSG has done in terms of creating subsidies in this area of digital transformation. And that's where, supply are actually very, very skillful for this role. But unfortunately, there are very few people in this role to address the market. And that's where, strategies like training more through tertiary institutions or even have, people who are targeted for career redeployment to reskill into this new data analyst role. For example, in this case, financial executive. So that's the general thing that we do on a day-to-day basis in JobTech. And using the information and some of these work that we've done with our clients, or what we call innovation partners, I want to share with you on a general landscape of how do we prepare ourselves for the post-COVID-19 world. And this is good news. And I think personally, I think Singapore is very well positioned for recovery. And one of the main reasons is because there's strong fiscal support from the Singapore government for both employees and employers. And for example, or essentially everyone, people on the streets, and for example, the skills future credit that government has pushed out for everyone to reskill, to pick up new skills, to prepare for the future or the future of work. There's also in Singapore, there was also a very strong labor market pre-crisis, strong industries like manufacturing, electrical sectors with abundance of job opportunities. So what we're seeing here is, as we progress, I think these industries that are currently slow will start to pick up again because of our history. The last thing that I feel will probably pull us out of this whole crisis is really the investment into products and technologies that we have done over the years, and today they have all matured. For example, there are a lot of product companies in Singapore that would be able to probably understand labor market friction and can support employers and people leaders to get their people ready. And what do I mean by getting their people ready through learning and development. So what are the key imperatives for Singapore? I'll group this into two different buckets. And the first one, of course, while we're still in this crisis, is to manage unemployment. This is absolutely critical. And of course, for the mid to longer term thing that we need to do is, of course, then to build workforce resilience or to transform our workforce for the new reality. And for the first one, and what I want to say here in this slide is essentially technologies are getting deployed to empower those who require social emotional touch. So I think today, if you have an in-house career advisor or you're using a government-supported career coaches, there are a lot of times people said there are inconsistencies in recommendations of oneself's career path or learning journey for the next role. And this is inevitable because every of these career advisors and every of these career coaches have different experiences and industry familiarity. So for example, I'm in the ICT sector. If someone asked me something about marketing, right, I would not be able to answer very specifically on marketing role. And what I would do is probably to give very general advice, and that potentially may not be able to address the individual's problems or even personal aspirations. And that's where there are tools and technologies that can help empower career coaches or people leaders in this by machine profiling the clients and then using market-driven data to do skills gaps analysis before suggesting or recommending information or strategies to move forward. Instead of current gut feel, I think Python is very important in data science, and that's why you have to have Python skill sets. Not like that anymore. If you want to be a data analyst, what kind of skill sets should you have? If you're currently not in the IT role, you're currently in some other role, what are the transferable skill sets that you can do that you can potentially move into this new role or help you pick up those skills gaps. But this is where the people who can provide the social emotional touch are far and few between because they're pretty limited. Even within an organization, the people leaders within an organization can only help that many people. And that's where there are also tools and products that can help with the people who can self-serve, or the majority of the people. And that's where we talk about things like robo-advisory for people who can self-serve. Because there are a lot of times, right, when if you think of yourself as an individual trying to find a job, right, and if I am for example, if my last role is a director in marketing and sales, what would I do when I go to a job portal like My Careers Future, right? What I will do is then I'll search for marketing, I'll search for sales keywords. You will not be able to search beyond your own domain, right? And you would have potentially missed out on a perfect opportunities where, essentially these opportunities requires all of your skill sets, but the title, the job title is not somehow not named sales and marketing. And that's where technologies are available for recommendations, and they are today getting more and more sophisticated beyond just general keywords. And this is what we call contextual matching of people to jobs and jobs to people, where we are able to understand the context of certain skills in certain sectors or in certain occupation. For example, Apple, if you mention it to a fruit grocery retailer, Apple means apple, the fruit apple, but Apple in a ICT sector means something else totally, which is the smartphone manufacturer and IT firm. So those kind of contextual matching of tools and algorithms are currently available to help everyone with some kind of AI career advisory. Yeah, so that's the part of managing unemployment, sophisticated algorithms currently available. But I think in the longer term, in mid and longer term, what we want to really help out with is, building workforce resilience or really transforming the workforce. And I think it's very, very critical that learning and development should not be a one-size-fits-all. I think today, a lot of people are like, are presented with a list of courses and modules to take, right? To kind of say, just go and search for what you're interested in. But I think it's increasingly more important to upskill or reskill based on your business demands or business goals, profile, and I really want to say personal aspiration, interest. I think our workforce in Singapore, there are a lot of millennials coming out to the market, and I think this is also one key area that we have to look out for in terms of personal interest. But unfortunately, today most platforms see skills as a list of keywords, and that's where it results in very oversimplistic algorithms that's losing meaning, and recommending. Potentially, you may have encountered recommending very unsatisfactory opportunities in terms of reskilling and upskilling. I want to give you an example of my own profile on LinkedIn. This is actually my profile on the right-hand panel. This is actually my skills and profile on LinkedIn, and so I'm known to have data mining skills, text mining skills, natural language processing, machine learning. And I think a lot of times, right, when I speak to my clients, and what happened is, they always say that ICT is very future ready, it's future proof, and I will have no problem finding a job. There are a lot of courses out there that can take to get new skills. But I think what is important, why I want to show this LinkedIn profile, is looking at my ICT profile as a people leader or as a career coach or as someone who is going to give me advice on my future. It's not easy, because what would you recommend me as, just looking at my profile? Let's say if I'm unfortunately displaced by JobTech, what would you recommend me to search for in my next role? It's not easy, because if you look at my profile, you see software engineering, computer science, you'll probably think that I can be a developer or programmer in a software house. But if you look at my data mining skill sets, you might think that I can actually search for being a data analyst, data engineer, or data scientist, right? But essentially it's not so simple, because I look at this whole generic profile, right? I don't think it's easy to place me. Or for example, how do I learn a future ready skill? So just by looking at my profile, it's not easy. And that's where I want to bring you to the next slide, where essentially I want to bring you to this little footnote here. This is a song written in 1956 called Que Sera Sera, and translates to whatever will be, will be. The song is about a little girl asking the mother what she will be in the future. And the mother said, the future is not ours to see. whatever will be, will be. But I think in today's world, this should not be the case because we have all these information and sophistication in recommendation, right? So essentially, this is what I want to show you is, would I be, how would it, what would it take for me to become a full stack developer? You would think that based on my LinkedIn profile, it would be natural, but unfortunately, it's not. What you see here is in this skills graph. My actual transferable skills to this new role is actually just there's only one transferable skills based on my LinkedIn profile, and there are 11 skills gaps. And all these red nodes that you see in this skills graph are the skills gaps that I have. But what is encouraging for me is then all these skills gaps are very tightly connected to my ICT profile. And what it means is then for me to pick up these skills is relatively easy. And it doesn't require me to invest a lot of my time and money to go take all these courses. There are 3 courses that's recommended for me to take, so to close these skills gaps to become a full stack developer, and that requires $3,600 of training and 58 days that I have to invest my time into. So this is relatively easy. But what if I said, after 10 years in the ICT industry or being an ICT professional, would I be able to move forward or move on in a horizontal role as, for example, in this case, digital sales executive? And if you see here, the same skills graph, the number of transferable skills that I have, essentially, there are no transferable skills that I have. And I have a lot of skills gaps, 13 skills gaps. And that's where then for me to close these skills gaps to become a digital sales executive, it's not so natural because they're all surrounding my profile. They are not connected to my profile. And that's where then I will have to invest a little bit more time and a bit more energy, monetary investments into picking up these skill sets for me to successfully transit into a digital sales executive. And that's where then also is, we want to be then presented information about if I were to make this transition, right? What are the opportunities out there that that will support my decision to transit into this new role. Yeah, so I'm going to leave at that 2 example, but I think there are a lot of people in the industry to say that is there some sort of a crystal ball that we can, train a machine to understand, in terms of predicting what kind of skills are going to be emerging, what kind of jobs are going to be growing or emerging in the future. And that's where within JobTech, we kind of created this, what we call Talent Future Index, TFI in short. Essentially is to use all these information and data that we have to create this mathematical model to measure a person's future readiness. And how do we do that? Is essentially we are taking one person and benchmarking this person to the people in the industry. It doesn't have to be in Singapore only, it can be in leading markets like in Europe and UK, to find out what kind of skills gaps this person has. And if you look at my LinkedIn profile, or if you recall my LinkedIn profile in the previous slides, you'll see that I'm an ICT professional, and you might think that my Talent Future Index might be pretty high. I mean, that's a general statement, right? But if you're really drilling closely into the individual skill sets, my TFI score is actually 43. And if you think of it as as an exam score, right? Out of 100, a theoretical 100 can be achieved. 43 means failed. And what it means is, no, I'm very vulnerable to imminent disruption based on my profile on LinkedIn. And how do I come out with this 43 is then I'm benchmarking my profile not just to the Singapore ICT professionals, but professionals in the UK and the US market. And that's where I realized that I have a lot of skills gaps versus those people in these leading market. And that's where the TFI score is poor. And that's where then I have to seriously look at how to upskill or reskill myself if I want to continue in the sector. So, you know, I think during the COVID, kind of accelerated a lot of people movements and learning and developments. And I think before COVID, who would have thought that, for example, an airline cabin crew would be able to be placed into the healthcare sector where they have a lot of needs for frontline workers. But I think that's still a very general kind of movement where, a lot of the skills that are being transferred over to the healthcare frontline worker is probably softer side of skills. But I think today the sophistication in the technologies and products are, we are able to then drill down very deep into that person's profile. In this case, this is an actual use case of a SIA cabin crew who has been with the company since 2008, who has actually a diploma in applied food science and nutrition, who has a degree in nutrition and dietetics. And that's where we are able to then look at the person's skills profile and be able to then suggest training plans for her to move, to transit into a new role that is sun rising, in this case, this person can be transited into roles within the Temasek portfolio companies. Like it doesn't have to be SIA, it can be, other TPCs like DBS, ST Engineering, so on and so forth. I have another use case where, essentially this person is a DBS service executive, and since 2013. I think banking today, right? DBS service executive is the role where, when you go to a bank, these people service you behind the counter for whatever banking services they need. Because of the proliferation of digital banking, this role is actually sunsetting in the local market as well as the global market. So there are very few roles in the banking sectors ever since the digital banking proliferation. So this person is service executive with a diploma in business computing, and amazingly, this person actually has a diploma in professional makeup artistry. And same thing here, we are able to then say, based on your business computing diploma, you might be outdated because that was quite long ago, but how do you then pick up new skills, and essentially what is the closest role you can move into that is not sunsetting but sunrising? In this case, this is a data coordinator job. Openings in the market, there's a significant opening in the market within the Temasek portfolio companies. These are the jobs available. So I'm going to show you a use case of potentially, how we understand labor market information and the details of how we understand sector information or to make that kind of recommendation. So I'm going to use something that is a little bit hard, right? Maritime use case where, ICT, usually people tell me it's very easy. And so this is what we do all the time with our data. For example, we look at how the trends of jobs in a sector. In this case, this maritime jobs between 2019 and 2020. I intentionally use this period of time because this is the period of the crisis. So we are able to then say that, based on job openings, we are able to, we see a 28.5% drop in terms of hiring in the maritime sectors. That's probably accelerated because of the COVID. If you look at the chart on the right-hand side from February onwards, which is our Singapore circuit breaker period, there's a huge decrease in the number of hiring, even though you see a stark increase before the COVID period. We're able to then drill down into the hiring patterns, and essentially a lot of times people has the misconception of a maritime sector, right? There'll be a lot of jobs, seafaring and offshore, which a lot of Singaporeans don't like to do. But in fact, a majority of these jobs in the maritime sectors are actually corporate functions. And if you see here, you look at the occupation that the maritime sector are hiring for: human resource executive, account executives. Of course, there's seafaring jobs like mechanical engineer on board the ship to do repair, but not all of them are actually seafaring. There are a lot that is still within Singapore mainland. And what are the top maritime skills? And if you see here, then there are a lot of general skills, but there are also specific skills. For example, they are looking, the top skills that the maritime sectors are looking out for in a HR professional is actually talent recruitment. And you can understand why, because just now I mentioned about, a lot of people has this misconception about the maritime sectors, all seafaring. So the HR executive or the talent acquisition professionals in this sector usually have a tough time trying to convince people or trying to change that perception of the industry. And that's why I think talent recruitment is actually one of the top skills that the HR professional actually needs. In terms of digitizing or data or AI literacy in the maritime sector, I guess this chart kind of said that it remains stable. It's essentially, despite the COVID-19 crisis, essentially the requirements for skills in the technology jobs are still the usual things that most other industries are looking out for. Same thing, if you recall the talent quadrant just now, we are able to then map out kind of jobs versus the number of the people in terms of the skills and how well they are met for the role. For example, in this case, there's this role in the maritime sector called environmental health and safety engineer. Declining demand from 2019 to 2020. Supply is well skilled. The size is very small, low supply. But in this role, there's a very high transferability to other sectors. So we are able to then suggest that maybe the maritime sector has slowed down quite a bit because of the COVID situation. Why not do some kind of career transition at this phase? If you really like the sector or the role that you currently have, that you can move back in when the business starts to pick up. And then, of course, in this case, there's this production engineer growing in demand in the maritime sector, but supply is not adequately skilled. And definitely then we'll want to look into upskilling and or reskilling kind of strategies for the company. I'm going to leave you with some other information, which unfortunately is not good news for business owners or employers, but it's actually good news for employees. Is jobs that essentially mentioned work from home has increased by 4 times. I think what the COVID-19 situation has caused is this whole big shift in the typical work environment in Singapore. And that's where you see that even though traditionally, right, jobs that are a bit more personal, like BD and sales, right, where you prefer to have your business development managers or sales person to meet you face to face over coffee to talk about products and contracts. Unfortunately, this has also been moved into that working remotely part. Previously, what you see here is, most of the technology in 2019, most of the technology jobs do mention working from home because you don't have to be physically in the office. As long as you have a good internet connection, you can do all these things. But today, there are also other roles that are mentioning this. Yeah, so I'm going to stop here for questions and answers. This is my name card actually. So if you have any questions beyond this seminar, feel free to reach out to me. I'll be happy to talk to you more about our product offerings as well as our data in the labor market.
Thank you, Wee-Tiong, for the great sharing on the future of work in a post-COVID world. So right now we will start the Q&A session proper. So we already have 4 questions in the Q&A panel. The first question that has been upvoted would be, can SG United learners join and help them in job search?
For sure. Yes, there are many job portals out there that helps you with the job search. But I think feel free to reach out to us to see how we can help you in a more AI recommended way. We're looking for definitely beta testers of our products. Even though today our product is majority used by enterprise corporate clients who service their employees, but we're very open to have users of the product to help us with the product development. Yeah, I want to say something cheesy, use AI to beat AI.
Okay, thank you, Wee-Tiong. Yes, indeed, we need AI to beat AI. So we have another question from Lynn. It says, thank you for sharing. May I ask, where are the inputs and sources that you're acquiring data from to determine the job roles that are declining or growing?
Within JobTech, we have a very sophisticated data aggregation and analysis platform. And why do I say it's sophisticated? It's because it's not just analyzing data from traditional job boards like My Careers Future, JobStreet, LinkedIn. It's also analyzing data from applicant tracking systems. So if you realize in the market today, right, there are a lot of companies with their own career pages, and these pages are actually hosted by applicant tracking systems. And that's where our data aggregation engine actually crawls into as well. In fact, we are known as one of the world's biggest data aggregator of labor market information, and this is verified by researchers. And I think, and the reason why we want to do that is not to essentially, sell these data as advertisement, but what we hope to do is to use these data to present some form of insights, labor market insights to people who are in need of those. So, for example, we're able to help companies say that, in terms of your marketing department, how do we digitally transform the marketing department for the future? That's where we are able to then, based on how people are hiring for digital marketeers, be able to advise this company to do the same. So this is purely market driven. There are a lot of times also we provide such information to pre-employment students, and I think the whole thing, when I first graduate, right, the whole idea is, you get a degree and then you work for 40 years and you retire, with the same degree. But I think this phenomenon is actually going to change quite significantly, because I think because of the advances in technologies, I think a person will probably have to change career 3 to 4 times in the whole life, and that's where we want students to actually have a taste of the market reality even before they step out into the workforce. And that's why we want to tell them that, hey, if you're interested in games development and you are currently in a diploma course, for example, in games development, hey, the reality is, there are not many games development jobs for fresh graduates. And that's where you might want to try your hands, because in games development, there are certainly certain skills that you can transfer to other roles, which will put bread on the table. Yeah, so this is why we want to aggregate and analyze the labor market data.
Okay, thank you, Wei-Tiong. We have more questions coming in. So one from Wei-Xiong, it says, it sounds like the Future Talent Index is now focused on individuals in benchmarking with other talents locally and overseas. Would it be possible to aggregate FTI so as to measure the overall skills gap for our local workforce in certain key job roles / emerging skills of concern?
Yes, in fact, the reason why we measure it on an individual level is then for us to accurately abstract to broader or macro level. So because we know the individual level, then we are able to then average out the score in a departmental or functional level, and then definitely then abstract it further to the company or organizational level, and then further abstract it to the national level. And this is, I think, this is a different way of doing things, because this is a data-driven way of doing things, and that's why we start with the bottom up. The previous way of doing such analysis is always the top down, right? Where I have a feeling that this maybe the Singapore labor workforce requires this, and then we try to drill down deeper into the roles. But this is a bottom-up approach. And why is this approach important to us is because of data. That's how we are doing things different today. That's how we are also helping our global consultancy firms, clients, with some of their consultancy work. Today, they are using a lot of our data to augment what they feel that an industry needs, like in terms of emerging skill sets. Veterans in certain specific industries do have their views on that, and data actually comes in to then support that views. For example, I'm in an ICT industry for the past 20 years, and I think moving forward in ICT, right, certain programming skill sets are important. I do have a gut feel, but is it supported by the data? That's the question. Yeah. So this is what we do for policymakers as well as labor consultants.
Okay, thank you, Wei-Tiong. We have 2 questions from Joyce. Number 1, how do we envision companies applying the FTI and the influence on L&D strategies to proactively upskill talents for future job profiles? It appears that specific digital competencies will take a longer trajectory to upskill talents. And number 2, do we also see coding / digital skills becoming a new normal, skills across the workforce? Is this a realistic lens of the future?
Okay, the first question is, I think in terms of learning and development journey, it's not a tool or a technology issue today. It's really a mindset change of the workforce. Just now I mentioned about this, graduate with a degree, work for 40 years and then retire. But this is not going to be the case moving forward, because of the reason I mentioned just now. Things are changing so fast, and everyone should have, I believe, will have 3 to 4 careers in a lifetime. And that's where I think everyone needs to have this mindset change. And actually working with our innovation partners and clients, right, what we do is, it's not just about deploying a tool or sophisticated algorithm or providing them with a labor market insight report, right, to tell them that, hey, this job is growing and these skills are required. It's about really telling them why they should learn, and it has to be hyper personalized. Why I say hyper personalized is because we're not. I think it should not be a case where we send everyone to a data or AI literacy course or modules, right? And then expect everyone to suddenly transform themselves and do things differently, because I think that's too much a one size fits all methodology. I think it needs to be hyper personalized, because it needs to be let's say if I'm a marketing person, you need to tell me what is the future of marketing within the sector, and is that future a digitalization, or is the future a sunset, meaning this role is going to just disappear because it can be replaced by automation or robots. So you need to tell me specifically what is that digital transformation strategy, and convince me about that with numbers like, hey, things are really moving this way. Our competitors are, employees are doing this. My colleagues are doing this within the company. Why are you not doing it? Those kind of things. So it's a very, I would say, personalized approach to L&D that we have to look out for, instead of deploying a system and then a list of courses there and then encouraging the employees to go search for the courses. Yeah, so it should not be like that. So we in JobTech, we do help companies with that whole mindset change, of course, by using AI as well to help encourage or to induce learning on a more sustainable manner. The second question, can you remind me again? Sorry.
Sure. The second question would be, do we also see that digital skills and coding skills are becoming a new normal skill across the workforce? And is this a realistic lens?
I wouldn't say coding skills is required for every profession or every occupation or every sector. I think the proliferation of new technologies, tools, software, products, and the openness to use these tools, software, products are more important. Whether you know how to program the product, I don't think is the key. But having some, I would say, IT literacy is, I think it will generally be beneficial. For example, so we have the talented products, right? Does everyone need to know the intricacies in the models that were built within the talented products? I don't think it's absolutely necessary, but the understanding of how we create, for example, the Talent Future Index model, and understanding the validity, the soundness of these models, or the veracity of these models, really will probably help in your role. But do you really need to get your hands dirty to create another model? I don't think there's a strong need to. And I think even for ICT role, right, as a software engineer, thinking, I remember started programming more than 20 years ago, and I started out with coding every single line of codes in the program. But if you look at programming today, right, you realize that a lot of these infra codes or structural codes are automatically programmed. That means the machine actually helps you write most of these codes, and all you need to put in there is the business logics. And that's where we realize that do you really need to be that kind of, to have programming skill sets essentially for all the roles? I don't think so. It's about being, I think digital literacy is about being open to what is available out there, and not be thinking about the tool is going to replace my job, and be very averse to it.
Thank you, Wee-Tiong. Bearing in mind that the time now is 10:55, we will actually be ending the Q&A session for today. Thank you so much, all participants, for the questions that you have shared with us. We will do our best to address to them after the session. So we are very grateful to have Wee-Tiong with us today, sharing with us skills and labor market insights and addressing some of the questions being posed. So to all webinar attendees, I hope that you have had really good takeaways from this session as well. And we would also like to encourage you to join us in our subsequent webinars, as we will be sharing on different topics every month. We will appreciate it greatly if you could also share with us your thoughts on the topics that you'd like us to talk about. Now, before we close, I would like to invite everyone to take a 2-minute survey, as your feedback, which will be kept confidential, is really important to us, and it will help us improve our future webinars to serve you better. So as you can see, the QR code for the webinar survey has already been put up on the slide. In addition, if you're interested to find out more about the initiatives that SkillsFuture has, we will also have a slide which shares with you the QR codes for both enterprises and individuals. As for the materials that Wee-Tiong has shared with us today, it will be sent out to you in the next few days. You may also refer to the My SkillsFuture portal, SSG's LinkedIn page, or YouTube channel for a review of today's content. Once again, my name is Lois, and together with Alex and Pei, we want to thank Wee-Tiong and JobTech team for their support and all of you for your time with us today. Meanwhile, please do help us with the 2-minute survey that will be shown on the screen.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.